I feel like I know you because we've back and forth a lot, and I've listened to you singing so much. You know, driving my car. We drive a lot in Australia. My work is always 2 hours away, 2.5 hours away in a car. So I listen to you, and I get right into the mood of it. I love your music. So Hulkoff is that your first name or your second name?
That's actually my family name. My
Family
first
name.
name is Pär.
Sorry?
My first name is Pär, spelled P-A with two little dots on it and an R.
Pär. Pär.
Yeah.
Pär. Yeah, in Icelandic we don't have the A with the two dots, but I've been that just sounds to me like P-A-R in Icelandic. And does that name mean anything particular?
Well, it actually, I think it's derived from a Christian name, from what's the English word for that guy? One of the disciples of Jesus Christ, Petrus. Petrus, is that the correct?
Yeah, Peter. Yeah.
Peter, yeah, Peter. That's it. I think it's derived from there. It means mountain or something like that.
Yeah.
But I have this, my second name is also my son's first name, and it's been in the family for a long, long time, and that's Einar. That means the lonesome warrior. And I prefer that name. But
so what does it mean? Einar?
It means the lone warrior, derived from Einherjar, of course.
Of course, Einherjar. That's one of my favorite words. Einherjar.
It's wonderful.
It means one-man army.
Exactly.
We say that in Australia. We talk about a bloke who can really fight, and we call him a one-man army. And that's very cool. I've always felt us Australians, we're sort of an older breed of British. Like my ancestry is mainly Scottish, and I was brought up in a very much a warrior's way. Like in my family, a man doesn't back down, especially to a bully. If somebody insults him if somebody insults me to my face now, I'm an older guy, I got a family, I contain my temper. But when I was young, if some guy started calling me names, I said, no, mate, you don't get to disrespect me. You call me that again, it's on. And that's the way I was brought up. And a man fights, for what's right. But now that's gone a lot, and people don't even remember that way. But I used to read the Viking sagas, and they never seemed foreign to me. I used to think, this is normal behavior, like some dude comes to my house with his mates and starts threatening me. Well, I bring my axe out and go, me and my brother and my mate here, we're going to have you, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think, oh God, how horrible, you know. A lot of people do now. They think what monsters they were. They were killing and fighting each other. It's like, so what? That's what men do. You try to avoid it, but if you can't stop.
I mean, there are a lot of discussions in that subject matter these days. You know what it really means, what it really means to be kind, and I really think that you can't be kind unless you have the sort of, how should I put it? You cannot be kind unless you are dangerous. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yep. You can't be gentle unless you're strong.
That's it. Yeah.
If you're weak, well, it's like, well, that's not really being gentle. It's just that you're a sookie and you can't stand up to people.
So that's being helpless, and that's something else. You're not kind because you're helpless. So yeah, I agree on you there. With you there.
But with my project Viking Superpowers, I've been into the Vikings since I was a kid, like 50 years, literally 50 years. I started reading. It's actually a little bit more than that. Started reading all these books about the Vikings, historical novels. Then I started to read scholarly books, more university level books, studying everything I could find about the Vikings. Then I started to learn the language. But I discovered Wardruna, and then similar bands, maybe 10 years ago, because I'm involved in Viking reenactment here, and I don't fight, but I tell the saga stories, and I entertain people and just clown around, being like a Viking storyteller. But when I found your music, it was just so refreshing because it's like really driving metal with great musicality, but you really know what you're singing about. I could feel the Viking heart and the authenticity. You're not just riffing on something that's popular. You're really into it.
Yes. Well, thanks a lot for the fine compliments, first of all. And I believe, that music is an extension of the soul. It's a way of expressing what's really on the inside. And music is not something we make for, trends or whatever. That has nothing to do with it. Trends and business is something else. Music is spiritual, and music is connected to the soul. Yes. And that's all I can say about that. I mean, it says something about the soul when you're into metal music, of course. We like that pounding feeling,
There's nothing better to find music that gets you going. Like your music helped me write my book. Especially at the end there, I just discovered you, and when I needed that energy, you had me going, and all the lyrics were so funny. A lot of time I laughed listening to you, and
that's awesome.
Kept me cheered up.
You know something, David, that this world is missing today? It's the understanding that humor does not make you weak. A real Viking was laughing when the arrows were flying. Yeah, so that's it. Humor is a great asset, and it has to be there.
Well, remember in that movie? Remember in the 13th Warrior? You've seen the 13th Warrior?
Yeah, I saw that as a kid. Yes.
Yeah, remember the scene where the poor old Arab, he's seasick and he's hiding there, and the Vikings are there laughing their heads off as they're just like the ship's sailing down this massive wave, and they're just they're just having the time of their life, the wild wind and the weather. And I was a surfer for many years, and I used to feel like a Viking sitting out in big surf on my surfboard, riding these big waves. And I'd always think, wow, Vikings would love this. If I could bring some old time Vikings here and give them a surfboard and say, come out here, mate, I'll show you how to ride the waves like we do. They would have been into it. And, and that laughing, in the face of danger and all that, that's the zest of a real man. My dad's always said, my dad was in the Air Force, but he was a air defense guard, so he's trained like a commando, really, protecting the aircraft from, people coming in trying to blow up the aeroplanes. And he said to me, the best guy to have when you're deep in enemy territory was somebody who could make you laugh, even when everyone was like pretty scared, and somebody who could make you laugh would just give everyone courage. And there's a lot of stories, about the Vikings. You know that story about, I think they were Yom's Vikings. They were caught by this king, and he was cutting their heads off. And this one big guy,
it was yours.
You know that one?
With the long hair when he's leaning over,
Yeah. And he pulls it back at the end and chops the guy's hands off. As a kid, I read that story and I laughed. I thought, now that's what I think of as Viking humor. It's grim as hell, but
definitely. Well, the thing is that there is a lot of darkness in the sagas, and there is also a lot of dark humor. And I've always been a big fan of dark humor. I've often been misunderstood because of it, also because a lot of people like to be, they really want to be offended by everything. But that's just how it is. If they want to be offended, that's fine by me, And they tell me you can't say that, you can't do that. But yes, I can. We got to laugh about it. That's just how it is.
Yeah. So tell me how you got into your music and how you got into the Vikings. I'm really interested to hear about that.
Well, both things, go kind of hand in hand. I started playing guitar when I was 9 years old. And I just saw a guitar, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And it's been a little bit the same thing about the Vikings, Where my grandpa were telling me stories about that stuff. There is this fictional book by Frans G. Bengtsson that is called Röde Orm, the Red Serpent. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
I've read that about 5 times. We just call it the long ships here.
Yeah, the long ships. That's right. That's the one.
I read that in the 70s.
Sorry, didn't hear you there.
I read that in the 70s. It was the first adult Viking book I ever read, and I just loved it. I thought, whoa, that was the best.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that was a game changer in many ways. So it's been, and I've been doing a lot of stuff. I was, as I told you, I'm raised on a farm, and being close to all that stuff with the animals, the hunting, the fishing, all that goes kind of hand in hand with the Viking, the Northman lifestyle, so to speak. Mm-hmm. That is something that has kind of influenced me throughout my whole life. And I've been playing music for a lot of years, and we had quite a successful career over here in Sweden with a different band that I had before, and we had a few touches of this Viking metal thing with that band as well, but it was more oriented towards, society and the decay and whatever, lots of dark humor there as well. Robtier is the name of that band if you want to check it out, but it's all in Swedish. So when we started up this record label, Follow With Recordings, back in, it's soon 10 years ago, me and my wife started this label together. We've been running it ever since, and it's been really been a success story in a small context, because the main idea was to keep it tribal and keep it real, let the music do the talking, and try to build a close tribe of followers. And it's really, that tribe has been growing ever since, little by little, and I love it. The people are so great, really supportive, and it keeps you going when it gets real tough, But I don't know what else I can say, really. I think that as a person, I might not be as interesting, I put a lot of focus into my work. That's what I do. I work almost all the time. If it's not with the music, it's some kind of woodworking project, or my farm, my farm business, or my horses, and the hunting takes a lot of time. Salmon fishing also. So I try to stay busy.
Yeah, it's awesome because you're living the life, and
yes,
you're a man on the land, and not many of us are hunters anymore. Like I must admit, I've hardly ever hunted, just because it's just not done thing. The places I've lived, mostly in the city, even when I was out in the farm, I did farm for a little while and loved it, but I don't really know anybody who hunts here. I think it's just Australians do, like further out west where there's lots of wild pigs and where there's too many kangaroos, blokes go out and shoot. And up north, they used to shoot crocodiles a lot, and wild ox, what do they call it? Buffaloes. Great big, very dangerous.
The water buffalo, yeah. I've seen those. I've seen those on YouTube. Yeah. Really majestic creatures. Would be great to take one with a bow and arrow,
Yeah, right. Do you do bow hunting?
Yeah, I do, but it's not legal in Sweden. Nothing is. So it's a bit complicated. I sometimes travel in Finland. It's legal, so I can do some small game hunting there. When I was younger, I did a bit of traveling, but those days are more or less over, and I'm not really into it for trophy hunting or whatever. These days, it's about training the dogs, keeping the tradition alive, and putting a little bit of food on the table.
Yeah.
So that's it. But I'm not against trophy hunting, not at all. I've defended it many times. I know it's controversial, and a lot of people think it's wrong, but I think it's great for wildlife management. It's a great way to finance wildlife management, and anyone who says otherwise is just plain wrong. So, yeah.
Here in Australia, people in the big cities are so divorced from nature, it's quite gobsmacking, I mean, the only animal they ever see is like a dog, a cat, or a cockroach, and a few birds flying around. They just don't see animals at all.
And
so they have these wildly unrealistic ideas about hunters and about, people living in nature, what it's really about, what it feels like. So how far up?
But I mean, sorry for interrupting, but I just, it's really, really hard to explain hunting to someone who feels that it's wrong and they don't want to understand. But it's like trying to explain music to someone who does not like music. It's very complicated, but it's a cleansing of the soul. That's what it's about. It's about cleansing the soul. You get in touch with that primitive side, and it is raw, and it's not always beautiful, not at all. It would be a lie if I said it was. But I mean, the morality and the ethic question around it is very simple. If you are a hunter, you want no animal to suffer. I know very few people who hunt who do not put the animals first. You know what I mean? It's all about game management. It's all about taking care of your dogs, taking care of the wildlife as much as you can. And you harvest the surplus. It's all these ideas about running around and killing, for the fun of killing. That's not what it's about. That's a that's a misinterpretation of the whole situation. But anyway, yeah. But let's not just talk about hunting. I will never stop if we start. So,
how far up north are you in Sweden?
Well, I'm pretty far up north. I'm let's see how many kilometers to the Arctic Circle. It's gonna be 50 kilometers to the Arctic Circle from here.
Really? So you're in the same latitude as northern Iceland. It's
it should be something around there.
Iceland's right on the Arctic Circle up the top there.
I mean, if you follow the boreal belt of forest, through Norway, Sweden, Finland, over Russia, and into Alaska, that's where we are.
And is there Sami people up there?
Yeah.
Do you have anything to do with them?
Well, there is a tradition up here since way before, these laws of today were written. That means that people who, how should I put this in English? It's a little bit complicated to explain, so I need to find the correct words for this. But the ones who have the old farms or the old estates, or what's the proper word for it, I don't know. They have the right to hold reindeers, because the Viking Day, the Iron Age, the Bronze Age population, they were herding reindeers as well as cattle, because reindeer are easy to maintain in the winter, you know, and these are not Sami people. This is not Sami tradition in that way. But they milked these reindeer, they made cheese, they made cream, they made whatever, you know. So there is a right, if you have, you need to have, it's like a cattle brand, but it's for reindeer. And if you have this brand, you know, attached to your estate, you have the right to own 30 reindeers as a non-Sami person, 30 reindeer. But to have more than 30, you need to be a Sami, you know, and that's, yeah, that's the law. That's how it is. So, yeah, there is sort of a connection there. My father has one of these reindeer brands. I don't have it myself, so I'm not active in that regard. I'm not keeping reindeer, you know, herding reindeer. So, but I mean, yeah, the Sami presence is. I think if you go further north, there is more, of course, because that's where they traditionally were settled. So.
Yeah, it's somewhere I really want to go to visit up the far north there. And I've got some friends in Sundsvall who stayed with me back in the 80s for, you know, quite a few months, and we were just great friends. They came from Sweden, and I had a room, and I said, "Why don't you just live in this room?" I didn't charge them anything, and we've stayed good friends since. And I hope to go and see them for the first time in all these years next time I come to Scandinavia. But so it sounds like you're a fair way north of Sundsvall.
Yeah, 700 kilometers further north.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a lot of winter, a lot of darkness up here.
Yeah,
and
I bet there is.
My wife is from the Sundsvall area. She's from a small village a bit west of Sundsvall.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I've been traveling through this country many times. You know, we have toured here for so many years I can hardly count them anymore. You know, so yeah, but this is a different thing. It's not overly populated up here because the winters are harsh. You know, they are long and they are cold and they are dark, and a lot of people don't enjoy that. And the summers are intense. They are short, but they are hot, and there's shitloads of mosquitoes, you know. So it's special, but it's home for me, you know. This is where I'm from, and this is where I'll most probably die one day.
Yeah, good for you. And that's I feel that authenticity in your music. You know, as soon as I heard it, I thought, now this guy is a real actual descendant of Viking type guys, you know. I get, and like I said, I haven't got your lyrics in front of me, but so many favorite songs that I just, when it comes on, I love this one. You know, you sort of talk about the old that old system, that you know, of family and connection and the Lord, and you know, the Jarl and his guys. And what's that favorite song of yours that
Are you thinking about the song Tveita? Is that the one?
Yeah. How do you spell that?
Tveita. You know, that's Old Norse for a throwing hatchet, a Tveita, a short, kind of like a tomahawk.
I'm not sure if it's that one I'm thinking about. It's sort of about the Lord, you know, the Jarl that everyone's devoted to, and the sort of what you owe the Jarl and what he owes you. And anyway, without going through the album, I haven't. I could probably find it on here, but I'm really interested.
Which album is it from? I have to, you know, I've done so much, so much music through the years that I hardly remember everything these days.
Well, the thing about your music, I just enjoy it so much. I just listen to it. I don't really, you know, memorize the names. I just look it up, but I'll just see if I can find
secondary, you know, names and whatever, you know, doesn't really matter.
Are you the main writer? Like, are the lyrics mostly yours?
Yes, I write everything.
So, what would be your main sources for the lyrics? Like, is it sagas or? is it just your knowledge that just comes out of your psyche?
It's actually a combination of sagas, historical research, life as it is. You know, I'm always searching for that connection between today and back then, because I think that the answer to the question about the future is written in the answers of the past. That's how I see it, you know.
Yeah.
And I often think about it. What does it mean to live like our forefathers today? And that's, I mean, we have some great tools, you know, to help us in our endeavors these days, like tractors and cars and whatever, you know. But still, the work is the same. You know, we do the same thing. We harvest. You know, we plow the earth and we plant the seed and we harvest it. We ride the horses, you know, and we shoot the bows and we do all that stuff. And we keep the spirit and the tradition alive. And that's also what I'm trying to do. I'm not so much, you know, you have to remember that I am not like you, David. I am not a well-read man. I'm not a well-educated man. I am a layman in every sense of the word. All I know, I taught myself, you know, and that's just how it is. I'm not particularly proud of it. It's just how it is. So if someone asks me about, you know, quoting whatever, you know, I probably can't because I don't remember. At the time I get a flash of brilliance, I write it down, I do something with it. But then, you know, eventually something new comes into the brain and the old falls out, and that's kind of how I function, unfortunately.
Yeah. I don't think it's unfortunate. I actually think I have a certain gift for scholarship, you know, reading, but I'm not a true academic. I don't really bother with too much, you know, academic quoting and this and that. I want to be a layman's guide to deeper things and get people, I point them to real scholars, say, go and read, like I got this friend in Iceland who's a professor, who his writing's just wonderful. You know, he's really interested in the paranormal. He's a professor of, it's Old Norse. They used to call it a professor of Old Icelandic. Now they call it early medieval studies, but he's the expert on the sagas, and he wrote a book called The Troll Inside You, Paranormal Activity in the Medieval North. And his name's Armin Jakobsson, but he's the coolest guy. He's a really smart guy, highly regarded, but when we started talking, he was like, yeah, you know, he liked the way I was thinking. And he liked the fact that I was looking at these sagas and retranslating with a fresh idea and saying, is this, yeah, probably no. My thing is that these Thor and Odin and Freya and all these people weren't gods, but they were not just humans. They were advanced humanoid people that were very human, but they lived for a long, long time. They had technology. They also had powers. You know, they had a íþróttir, we call it in Icelandic, which now means sports. Íþróttir.
Íþróttir, yes.
Yeah, but in the old days, it was said, you know, in Snorri's Heimskringla, he says that it was Odin and his Dýr, who seemed to be like trained disciples who brought the knowledge of these abilities to the north. They taught people, and Odin was the great master of it, and he could lie down and go into a trance and be an animal, you know, thousands of miles away. He could be a whale or a fish or a bird, and very shamanistic stuff.
Yeah.
But he also could, you know, make his enemies go crazy in battle, and he could make his men go berserk, fill them with this, you know, incredible battle fury. And I think it was more than just getting angry. I think it was like kung fu or something. I think berserk is releasing our natural, incredible fighting abilities, like a bear or something like that. You know, the natural strength that's way above the ordinary man. So all this íþróttir, he writes about that, and he writes about the fact that so many Old Norse words are not understood, like troll, trot. In Icelandic, a troll is not just a big, ugly, monstrous sort of thing like in Tolkien and The Lord of the Rings. It could be just like a small woman. A troll could be like a witch or a vampire or any number of possible things. The way it's used in the stories is not consistent. And same as Jotun, that word. The giants are not necessarily big, and the dvergar are not the dwarves are not necessarily small. So the old texts are full of mystery still. But I love what you said earlier about you want to bring the old way into the future. That's how it is for me. It's a quest. For me, it's a quest to rediscover the powers of my ancestors, the abilities, and also I think they're still around. I think they're still here in this council of powers that have been here for thousands of years. I really do think they're the good guys. I reckon the Aesir, these powerful ones of the north, I reckon they're mostly benevolent. I think they're on the human side, and I think there's others that are not.
I agree on that part. It's the interesting thing is one of many interesting things about this. I remember the first video I saw. I came across your thoughts around Wayland the smith.
Yeah, yes.
His high-tech engine. And I've actually been thinking a little bit about that stuff. I mean, like that statue or whatever you want to call it, that little thing where you see him attached to this flying thing. That's exactly the one.
Yeah.
That's so very, very interesting. And the things you say, it makes a lot of sense to me, because I agree. I mean, what is a god? A god is someone who can teach us everything. That's what I think is a god. We sometimes talk about guitar gods or martial art gods or whatever. If someone is way above our level, it becomes a god automatically. If they even created us, that's what it is. But this thing about Jotnar and giants and that stuff. Well, next year we are releasing this album called Jotunheim, which is about, it's sort of touching a little bit on that subject, but I found it really, really hard to make it as deep as I wanted to, because I really cannot find enough information that really makes any sense. So it's been a challenge in many ways. I've rewritten a lot of the lyrics many times, and it's not exactly what I had in mind, but it's so often like that when you make an album,
Yeah.
And there is this one guy that I think you should get in touch with, my friend in Norway, Sturla Ellingvåg. He has Viking Stories on YouTube, and I recommend everyone who sees this channel to check that out as well. His knowledge is infinite. He's been helping me with a lot of research, for this Jotunheim stuff, and sometimes he just, he pops up with this really, really fascinating stuff. He was talking about the swords, the Viking steel. Yeah. Because when they opened the grave mounds, they found that there was ash missing in the urns, from the burnings of the corpse. And this ash was hammered into the iron, and that's what made the Viking steel. And talk about carrying your forebears into combat,
Yeah, wow, that's powerful.
That's powerful stuff, and it means a lot. Sturla, that's it. Yes.
And what's the surname?
Ellingvåg. I can write it down for you if you want to, but it's ELLINGVÅ. That means A with a circle above and then a G. Ellingvåg.
Sturla Ellingvåg.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay.
Ellingvåg, that means the Ely waves. The waves coming in, the giant waves. Blow the God, that was one of them. Yeah. There's a song on the Jotunheim album about Blow the God. It's interesting stuff, that, the blood wave.
I think when you read my book, you'll enjoy it. And there's I mean, a lot of the stuff I write about the book, I was just discovering it on the fly as I was writing the book. And I kept reading, going, oh my God, and I'd see stuff. So I'd just write it down as I was finding it. And so much of it I'm still processing, thinking, what have I discovered? And one of the interesting things about Jotunheim, well, it's a couple of things. Jotun seems to be the same word as jute, what you call in English, like Jutland in northern Denmark. And also in Snorri's Edda, Snorri Sturluson's Edda, Ynglinga Saga, it talks about as if humans are the Jotun. Like the first humans seem to have been Jotun. And there's all this stuff about Eli Vagar, this like place, like a planet where there's all this venom drips and it's all ice. And I think this, in my sort of science fiction brain, I think the story about the giants is that they came in suspended animation in some kind. This is, science fiction, but it reads to me as if it's talking about ships that were sent out over hundreds of years. The people inside were frozen, maybe babies, and they came to the Earth, and that they were some of the first people here, and that they were sort of, like seeded on the planet, and they were the Jotun. And I won't go into it here because I really want to just hear more of your ideas, but
No, it's super interesting. It's a different take on the whole thing. And I think, the Jutar, the Jotnar, the giants, it's pretty interesting that they're often talking about Jotunheim being way up north, And this Sturla has been doing a lot of DNA research, and he has been finding a lot of interesting things about the origins of people. It's a little bit different than what we're taught, through, whatever. Let's not get too deep in that. I really don't want to dabble too much in this kind of stuff. I always get a lot of shit if I say something that I cannot academically prove, and I cannot because I'm not a sorry. I'm not an academic.
Yeah, but honestly,
okay.
We live in a world full of nerds, and Viking nerds are some of the worst. They're often sort of chubby guys that think, I am a Viking, and they grow a pretty good beard, but they're just not fit. They're not like they're not fighters. But these guys, I sort of enjoy them because they're usually pretty intelligent, but they'll pick to pieces everything. They're always looking for cracks to pick on. And I had this guy write to me and tell me I was full of crap. He was from
right. Awesome.
He was from Denmark, and he said that he was an academic historian, and how dare I screw around with the myths, how dare I take the Danish stories and make them into UFO people and whatever. And I just pulled out my trump card and basically said, well, I'm good friends with the professor of Old Norse at the University of Iceland, the Háskóli Ísland, and dropped his name, the professor's name, and I said, he doesn't agree with everything I say, but he likes what I'm doing, and he encourages me, right? He doesn't think I'm an idiot. And this guy didn't come back because he was like, okay.
Yeah.
He thought I was just found the Vikings from watching the TV show or something.
Oh, yeah. That TV show was, that's something else, really. No, not the biggest fan, but that's a completely different subject. What I was going to say is it's interesting, this UFO thing. I mean, everyone would agree that the Valkyries, for example, were flying, above the battlefields and whatever. A lot of these things happened in the sky. They all could fly. And what is a UFO? That's an unidentified flying object, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I rest my case there.
Absolutely. And that's a very good point. And there's a goddess called, she's got a funny name, it's Gna. It's Gna. And I think she was I think she was one of Freya's girls. So she was probably a Valkyrie, but there's a story that she's flying on this horse way up in the sky, and these Jotun on the ground go, "Oh, what's that flying up there above the clouds?" And then somehow she hears them, maybe telepathically, and then so she comes down and lands, or next thing she's talking to them face to face. So you have to assume she's come down, and she says to them, "It's not me that's flying; it's my horse." And the horse's name is it means in English hoof striker, and it says, and the mother of hoof striker was fortress destroyer. All right, so it sounds like a fighter bomber or something, but she's it's a fortress destroyer, and a hoof striker sounds like guns at the front. That's how I think, like the horse is striking. But what I love about it is it's so sort of real. Like the Jotun go, "Hey, what's that flying up there?" And she comes, "Oh, it's not me, it's my horse." And I think the horse is just a word to describe some kind of vehicle, some way of transport, some thing that carries things, It's like the American Indians called a locomotive an iron horse. And obviously they knew it wasn't really a horse. It's a great big black steel thing pumping out smoke, but they called it an iron horse because a horse was a word that meant something that moves fast and transports and carries. So I think there's a lot of proof that there was flying going on, actual flying, and not just magical flying like fairies.
Well, that's probably very true. I will not disagree. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people who claim to be a believer in the old gods who would not agree with you, which I find very, very strange, because if you believe, you must actually believe they existed.
Yeah.
And the fact that they existed and still exist, is that's a very to me, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's part of the human brain, to sort of try to explain what was going on. So what you're doing actually makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, that means a lot to me. And I think I told you I've had heaps of Scandinavians write to me and say, "I love what you're doing."
Oh, yeah.
Gives me courage, because I feel as a non-Scandinavian, it's a little bit presumptuous talking about a culture that's not mine, but I've always felt it's mine, it's my ancestors at least.
Yeah, but I mean, you live in Australia now, but your ancestors are from Scandinavia. I mean, you're as connected to the old, the old Norse as we are today here.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I was just talking to the bass player here a little while ago, and I find it so very interesting, that a lot of people from outside of Sweden and Scandinavia get in touch with me all the time to talk about things concerning the, old Scandinavia and the old Norse and all that stuff. But I sometimes feel that the interest is pretty low here in actual Scandinavia today. Because other things are a lot more important now. I don't know what is, but probably TikTok and shit like that. That's what people are into nowadays.
Yeah, and the political system you've got there is similar to what we've got here. I won't go into the politics, but there's a sort of
let's stay away from that. That's a hot potato.
But it's sort of not. You wouldn't say it's very masculine, and there's also a dislike of the Vikings by a certain type of people. They think, they were, toxic, masculine beasts, and those people who think that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah. well, I mean, sure, they would be pretty toxic and masculine if you insult them in the wrong way. So
Yeah.
And yeah, well, of course, we both know what it's like. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is that our university here in Queensland, sort of north east of Australia, we used to have a very famous Old Norse department from the Victorian era. They were famous since about 1870 when the university was built. Big collection of books about the Viking Age and the Icelandic language. And I used to go there in the 70s, just pore over these wonderful books in Swedish, books in German, books in, other Scandinavian languages. And then in 1984, the university said, oh, this is too difficult, and they shut it all down. They stopped after more than 100 years, they stopped teaching Old Norse. And a lot of people are very disappointed, but it was just they went, no, we're not interested in that anymore. And recently I looked up universities in Denmark, and they don't have a single Old Norse course in Denmark, like at least at the major universities. None of them are teaching Old Norse anymore. And I don't know what it's like in Sweden, but I think Iceland is virtually the only place you can really study this now. And
that's possible. That's very possible. Yeah, I mean, it's not really, how should I put it? I mean, the Viking Age became a little bit mainstream with this Netflix series and all that stuff. But there was the way I see it is there's a lot of black leather and gothic haircuts, and a lot of flying magic owls and stuff like that. But it's, for me, that's not the way I see it. It's because everything sort of, how should I put it? With every generation, a little bit disappeared, something else took over, but there is always that little touch there somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's never like it's depicted in the American version of it all,
Yeah.
Because the plastic Viking Age is not, that's not what I like.
I'm with you. I like the series in that it turned a lot of people on to the Viking Age who are now open to finding out. The thing that horrified me, there's two things that really horrified me in that series. It wasn't the sexy haircuts and all that. It was actually the first Viking ship I saw had the steerboard, the starboard, on the wrong side. It had it on the port side instead of the starboard side. That, for me, that's just unforgivable. Viking ship, it's always when you're the what's it called, the skipstjorden, I think, the skipper.
Yeah.
From the steerboard's always on the right, on the starboard. And the other thing was an episode where these Vikings are cutting down this big pillar of London Bridge, and there's a couple of Viking ships rowing away, and they're going to pull down the bridge. It was in a show called Vikings Valhalla, which is one of the series that came later after the first couple of seasons of Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a beauty. I like the story and everything. It's sort of based on Leif Erikson and different things, and of course, Ragnar Lothbrok was a real saga character. But anyway, I know you know how to use an axe, and I grew up using axes. And in Australia, we still have a strong tradition of axemen competing, mostly in the country, but, competing for the fastest, cutting through big logs and whatever. So I'm watching this, and next thing, this guy's got a tomahawk, and the log's about this wide, maybe this wide. He's got a little tomahawk, and he's going, peck, 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 and he's like knocking chips off it, and I'm going, what? And he's taking it forever, and he's not getting anywhere. He's just sort of chipping. He's doing like 100 shots, and he's what my dad would have called a lightning axeman. He never strikes twice in the same spot. And, a real axeman would have been through this thing in 30 seconds, I mean, pow, just wedges coming off, especially life and death situation. And a Viking could use an axe. I mean, they Those guys live with an axe in hand.
But I think that's sort of what they completely missed. You know, the one thing that every Viking had in common, more or less, is that they were all, and I quote, farmers who came to blows. You know, they grew up on the countryside. They knew how to use a shovel. They knew how to use an axe. And, you know, through that handicraft, you know, and that way, that's how they grew strong.
Yeah.
And from that, yes, there were warrior societies, warrior cults or whatever, you know, but they were all farmers from the beginning. So it wasn't like, you know, nobody who has ever tried cutting anything with a tomahawk would you know, approach a big log with it. And that's
it was so laughable. I mean, I cringed. I was literally cringing. I was thinking, there is nobody on that whole set who's ever used an axe who can say, "Excuse me, director, that's pathetic. Like, you don't cut a log like that with a tomahawk." Could you get a real axeman to do it? Well, you don't see him. Just pretend it's that guy, because the guy has never swung an axe in his life. And he's supposed to be a hardcore Viking leader, you know. It was like, but I know that a lot of people love the show, and for those out there listening who love it,
I'm not
Hulkoff and I.
No. But I really don't want to put down anybody's creativity. That's not what I'm about. That's not what I'm trying to do. But there are certain aspects about that whole production that is a little bit questionable in my book. But that's a different matter. You know,
but you and I have been at it for a long time, so it's
yes, for sure. And whatever. Let's leave it at that. It's best.
Do you think you'll ever tour Australia, or do you tour around Europe?
You know, we've been touring in Sweden, and that's about it. You know, because I haven't really put that much focus into the touring and all that stuff. My son has been young, you know, he's growing bigger now. He's a very dedicated MMA fighter, by the way. But he's just 9, but he loves that stuff.
Yeah.
He's training a lot. Anyway, he's 9 now, so it's gonna be a little bit easier. I know. You know, when we start going up, because doing these long tours with small kids home, it's not. And also, I have this farm. You know, it's an obligation. You know, it's something that's always there, and the plight comes first, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would really, really appreciate going to Australia and doing a few shows over there, and maybe one day, you know.
Yeah, people would love you here. We Australians love our rock and roll, and Australians love the Vikings. I hardly ever. As soon as people find out I've written a book about the Vikings, men and women, they're like, "Oh, really?" And they just fire questions at me. Everyone's very interested.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah. So
that's very interesting.
Well, Wardruna.
Sorry.
Wardruna and some of those other bands have come out.
Oh, yeah. But Wardruna is, that's a success story. I mean, Einar Selvik is a very, very talented, very competent guy. And they, you know, the thing he did has influenced so many. There are a lot of bands who want to sound like him now.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, you know. He really brought the horsehair lyre, the talharpa, you know, in Finnish jouhikko. He really made that popular again, and I think he's doing. No. That's a munjiga. That's a different instrument. Well, it's called a mouth harp in English. But the horsehair lyre is like. It's a 2, 3, 4, or 5-stringed instrument. Looks a little bit like a sound box with the horsehair as strings, and you play it like a cello or something like that.
Yeah.
I built a couple myself, you know, that I've been using on some of the recordings. I'm still using them. They're pretty. They have a very special sound. You get that wild vibe from it. They are unruly, you know, hard to tame. And I love that shit, you know. I like it when it goes a little. That's when you get that vibe of the wild, you know. Can't control it.
Yeah, it's nice, very nice. And that's what I love about you and your music is that your heart shows through. It's not pumped out. It's there's so much difference in different songs and sounds. So I always know when I listen to whatever you're playing, I'll find myself just lost in it, and I'll just suddenly realize, oh, this song's really different. I like this is a different sound, a bit more acoustic sounding, or a bit
No,
less
yeah.
driving. But it's always like I feel like I'm listening to a guy from 1,000 years ago who just happened to get electric guitar from somewhere.
It's funny. I did an interview with it was a local newspaper, and he asked me about it was for the Heresy album, and he asked me what the main idea behind it was, and I told him that it's supposed to sound like if Motorhead were here in the Viking Age.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's awesome, and
thanks a lot, man. Thanks for the kind words.
Yeah, it's not hard to say them. Your music's great, and I as an artist, I started out wanting to be a famous painter like Picasso or something. The world was going to come to me and hang my paintings everywhere. I've done some good stuff. I can't make art unless my heart's in it. And I've got a garage full of really pretty cool stuff out there. And one day it's going to get sold. But I sort of tend to do it when the muse, as they say, hits. But for me, it's, I don't know, I think it's my filia. That concept. Yeah, it feels like my filia. She comes to me in dreams sometimes, and I always feel like if I do something without that inspiration, it always feels contrived and boring, and it doesn't have that spark. But when I boom get it and I put it down, 20 years later, I still look at it and think, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, that's it. Sometimes we have to put on that gray hat of compromise, when an album has to get done. You can't keep working on it forever. It will not, you have to accept that this is as far as you get.
Yeah.
You get it out, feel drained for a while, and then we start over, and try to reach that next level all the time. But generally, I agree with you to 1,000%. That the thing that comes out of a place of inspiration, that's the thing that will survive, the test of time.
Yeah, it's magic. It's definitely magic.
That's it. If magic exists, that's it. That's the music.
Yeah.
It's a very, very interesting thing. There was this guy who told me, but he had been, he went to some kind of, what's the word for it? It was some kind of trombone concert. And during the end of this show, the trombonist pulled up a cow's horn, and he played a few old Swedish herding songs from that one. They were talking about it, and he said that the interesting thing is that he goes around Europe, and he plays that, and he pulls out the horn, and people think it's real funny, oh, what a funny instrument, you're playing on a cow's horn. Yeah, sure, yeah, it's funny. But when it comes to Sweden, when it comes to Norway, people just fall into a trance-like state, and they get that 1,000-mile stare, and just, I really think that it's something deep in the soul that remembers where we come from.
Yeah.
These are not my words. There's another guy who had that experience, but I'm absolutely 100% convinced that it's how it is. There is something within us that will always remember.
I think it's a lot to do with reincarnation.
Me too. Yes.
I'm not. This is not my fantasy of a guy who just wants to have been a Viking, but the first time I did yoga, I had to be dragged there kicking and screaming. I didn't want to do it. I had a friend who was obsessed with yoga, and she was always trying to make me come. And I was like, oh, no, that's not me. The first time I did it, at the end of this very hard session, I was I was in a different state of mind, and we lay down on the mat. And as I lay there, I was on a funeral pyre. I was burning on this great in a big forest, and I recognised it looked like a Scandinavian forest. There's massive fir trees hung with lichen and moss. There was a great big guy with a red beard, red hair, with a flaming torch, and he was chanting in a language that I didn't recognise. I didn't actually recognise it as Norse, but I was burning, and all these women were crying down the end, and I just thought, wow, like there's nothing for me here. I could see all my flesh burning off, and I was totally there. And I went up with the smoke, and then I stayed up there for a long time, and it was just black. I couldn't see anything, and then I came back, and it was daytime, and I was in a little whirlwind, and I went flying through the forest super fast. And then there was a clearing, and it just looked like a pile of trees. But as I got close, I saw it was a little hut somebody had built, and there was a young blonde girl in there, heavily pregnant and panting. And I just went inside her, and then I became a baby about to be born. And then the teacher, I heard a voice say, "Everybody roll onto your right side," getting ready to come up from this. It's actually called um, corpse pose. It's shavasana. It means meditating on being dead. this yoga thing. People think it's just a lie down, but it's actually about meditating on the next life, and that's the vision I had. I knew nothing about this, but in my mind, I was lying on my back, but I was actually on my right hand side as this little baby, and I was really blissed out. And I realized the baby was about to be born, and so eventually I sat up and I told the teacher, and she said, I've been teaching yoga for 30 years. I've never heard anybody have a vision like that." But then later I thought, I think that was a past life vision. I remembered dying, being dead, and then coming back as another child, but in those days. And it might have been the Viking Age. It could have even been a lot earlier, it could have been way back.
Mm-hmm.
But so I know I've lived in ancient Scandinavia at least once. And so when you talk about the cow's horns and feeling that feeling, I know what you're saying. It's sort of like something. It's like a dream where you meet people and you feel so attached to them, and you wake up and think, "Oh, who were they?" Like,
Oh yeah. But there is, I am by no sense particularly, well educated in this topics of meditation or whatever and all that stuff. I'm really into archery, of course.
Yeah, cool.
Because I have been that for many years, and the tradition of bow making the old way here. That's something that really interests me. And also, there is this book that is called Zen in the Art of Archery. I don't know if you've read that.
I've read that. Yeah, I love that book.
Yeah, and I think that's the closest thing that I ever get to meditation. Is when I'm shooting my bow and I'm shooting instinctively. I'm not thinking about it. I'm just letting the arrows fly, just focusing on breathing and focusing on just being there, becoming one with a shot.
Wow.
And it's I never get any supernatural epiphanies, when I do it.
Yeah.
But still, it's once again, it's a soul cleansing experience, and I think it's a little bit the same thing as yoga and meditation. And my wife is really into yoga; she's really great at that stuff. But I just don't find the time. I have too much stress in the body,
Yeah. Well, I'm not much at yoga physically. I'm not very flexible, but my mind gained a lot from yoga because I used to be extremely stressed out from, a career I had that was very stressful. But I love that you're an archer and that you know that book, because that's one of the most profound books ever written. because I think it's a book everyone should read. It's very hard for people to understand, but you obviously understand.
I try to, at least. Sometimes I have that a little bit too high thoughts of myself and my ability to understand things. But I think I get a little bit of the point. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I pick you as an extremely intelligent man, but not every intelligent person is a bookworm. Like, intelligence is not measured by how many books you've read. I think there's a lot of people who are very intelligent with books who are not very intelligent in practical life. And there's so many lessons to learn from just doing stuff. It's very
That's it.
important.
Well, I think the best way to be is a combination of both worlds, both academic and practical. But it's seldom the case,
Yeah.
It's seldom the case. It's often one or the other. It's the same in the musical world. A lot of guys are really, really wonderful musicians, but maybe not so wonderful at other things, because that has consumed everything. And I don't know if it's right or wrong. To be this kind of Renaissance guy and try to be good at everything, that makes you a jack of many trades but master of none. Is it better to become the sensei, and really put all your effort into being number one thing? I don't know. But for me, it doesn't work, because I'm too much all over the place all the time.
Yeah, well, you're an enthusiast, and there is so much. It's just getting back to what you said about the horn. The lure.
Yes,
that's the big Bronze Age.
That's that's the lure. That's they are super awesome as well. Yeah. But just the little cow's horn, and the shepherd's music. I use a lot of that. That it's a special scale. It sounds a little bit like the Dorian scale when you look at the church modes. But it's got one additional note, and there is probably some kind of academic title for it as well. But the way it sounds and the way it feels is very, very super Scandinavian, I would say. And you find it in Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark to a certain extent, I think. But apart from that, it's not so common, unless you go further east. So I think this is how it has a connection to the arrival of Odin and all that stuff, because the music has been around since the Iron Age. And I think it was Thor Heyerdahl, the Norwegian explorer.
Yep. Yeah, I know him.
Did you read his book where he's talking to his friend about hunting Odin? Have you heard about that one?
That's a book I want to find. I only have read the Kon-Tiki, because we read that at school.
Yeah.
But I've heard about him writing very similar to some of the things I'm interested in, and obviously you know about it.
Yes. I own that book. It is somewhere. I'm not even going to try to start finding it at the moment. But it's really interesting when we talk about this music, because he says that you can hear the same music in Azerbaijan, And he was talking about the connection between Azerbaijan and Asia, And could be possible. I'm not saying anything. It's just his thoughts. But if you listen to the folk music there, you can find the same mode. You can find this shepherd's music in their folk songs as well, which is a bit interesting. But then again, who knows? There are a lot of theories, that there's not enough time today, to talk about all these things I want to talk to you about. You have to come by, visit old Kvenland, so we can sit down for a long good while, heat up the sauna, and talk a little bit about everything.
I'm really looking forward to visiting you, mate. I really am. And you're more than I expected. I had this idea of a guy, but there's something about your face and your presence. You're a classic, Scandinavian, and a classic of a certain old type of Norseman.
Well, something that is typically Scandinavian is that when you get too much positive feedback, you become closed. It's too much to take in. But I appreciate all the kind things. I just don't know how to respond.
Yeah. Okay. No, I understand. I'm a guy that, sometimes I get accused of talking too much because I like to talk and I like to share with people. And some men here think that's a little unmanly to be a talker. But I've never been fazed by that. I know that I connect with souls, when I talk to I meet somebody like you, I feel simpatico with a person. I like to just talk. And I think people who don't talk, they're missing out.
I agree. Communication is key, Without communication, things turn sour pretty fast.
That's true.
Yeah. So I think it depends a lot about what you talk about. If you have nothing to say, then don't say it, But when there is a lot to share, well, you better get it out.
Yeah. We've been going for a while, and I don't want to hold you up from your day. I think it's morning there, isn't it?
Well, it's about midday now, 11:30 Swedish time.
I don't want your cows to bust out there or anything, needing milking.
No, but at the moment I'm waiting for a big load of wood chips that is coming. I got to get it under the roof before the snow falls. So that's next on the agenda.
Oh, cool! You're really a man on the land. I just wanted to ask you quickly, like, how many members in the band, and how long have you been together? And are they all local guys?
The thing is, that I often get this question, but this band is not really a band, to be honest. So there's been a little bit of people coming and going, but everyone is like, I put it this way: we're not a band, but we're a band of brothers. It's like the war bands of old. The one who has the time and who is most suited for the operational task at hand is the one who will join. What I mean? So at the moment, we're 3 guys. Sometimes we've been 4 guys. Sometimes, we've been more. And it comes and goes. There are a lot of folk musicians who show up here and there. Some guys play the flute, and what else do we have? Some percussion and whatever. Whatever makes the music the best it can be. That's really what is the drive behind this thing. But I didn't want to have this band concept because it's not a general heavy metal band in the sense. But I always put together the best band I can when we're playing live. When I bring the best guys that I can find.
Yeah.
So it's always going to be high quality. That's for sure.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, let's wind it up there. And we've had a good old chat, and there's always the future. But thanks so much for talking to me, mate, and persevering with the emails. And I greatly value your time.
I deeply appreciate this conversation. It's been rewarding in many ways, and I look forward to the next one.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll send you that book. As soon as I get I'm getting a box of them coming that I'm going to send to special friends. I consider you a special friend of mine now, if that's okay. And
that's more than okay. Likewise, brother. Likewise.
Yeah. Right on. And I'll see you again soon.
Oh, yes, definitely. In the meantime, take care, brother, and hail Odin, all father.
Hail Odin, the all father.
Okay, later, bro.
See ya.